Hello again, dance friends, and welcome to this week's technique tip. This week we are focusing on one very elementary isolation movement that actually gets incorporated into a lot of other things that we do in belly dance. So today we're going to be talking about a pelvic tilt. Some people call these different things, but the basic idea of it is you've got your pelvis in your neutral posture and you are literally tilting it off of its center and returning it back to that center. So to create this pelvic tilt, we really need to think about our deep, low abdominal muscles, the ones that are kind of between our belly button and our business. So if our knees are nice and bent, we will be able to rotate that pelvis forward and back, or tilt it, if you will. So what we want to do is make sure that we are in a neutral pelvic posture in the first place. So to find that, I want you to sort of pull the pelvis up and in, and then let it gently drop back, and just keep doing that to smaller pieces until you find a place where you feel supported in your low back and nice and steady and over your center. So we don't want to engage too much in the low belly, but we also don't want to just drop it out and let everything fall forward, which is going to create what I like to call the duck butt, where your behind is pushed back and behind you and compressing your lower spine, which is something we really don't want to do. So find that neutral place. You may find that there's a little bit of abdominal engagement to hold that position, especially with those knees bent. All we're going to do here is think about taking these hip bones and rotating them back by pulling in on that low belly. And you're going to find that the lower belly part comes up towards your chest a little bit, and you're going to feel that contraction right here, and it feels, just a little compressed in the front. And then to go back, you're just going to release that contraction. Now, what's really important here when we do this is that we are not releasing into the low back, at least not intentionally, not for now. Your low back is there for support. So if I'm in my posture and I pull that low belly in, and you can see that pelvic rotation, if I release it back to my neutral, that's all I need for it to feel like it's rotating in the other way. So it's like a tilt or a pelvic drop, we call them. And sometimes we will actually just push those belly muscles out for a more pronounced pelvic drop. So we can go pelvic tilt by pulling in and pushing out, pelvic drop. So this pelvic drop does, if you hang out here for a minute, you'll notice that your pelvis, your hip bones are tipped a little forward, your tailbone's tipped a little back into that position that I just warned you about. So let's make a distinction here about how we can make that release happen. Notice how I cued you with pushing the abdominal muscles out to create that other direction of tilt. So the pelvis, the hip bones go forward. So from my tilt, I'm engaged, I'm all pulled in here, and I'm going to push out in the abdominals, a little further than a release, a little more intentional, and that's going to send my hips in the opposite direction of my pelvis. What I have not done is contracted in my low back. That's what we're trying to avoid. So rather than going contract here and contract here, which is going to send us way off of our posture, we want to do a contraction here and then a release with maybe a little bit of extra power if you want that tilt to be a little more pronounced back and forth. All right, so we're going to take a look at this again. I'm going to go tilt, and then I'm going to pop out, so pushing it out. Or if I just want to do a tilt release, I can go tilt and then release to my neutral. It's a little smaller of a movement, but it gets the point of the tilt across. And so we could think of this as pelvic up, down, forward, back, or I just like to think of it as the tilt drop. So the tilt is up, pulling in, drop, pushing out, and at no point are we conscientiously engaging the lower back muscles. They are supporting, they're working, and we don't want to overwork them. That's the key. All right, so why just work on this little tiny thing? We're going to put this into a lot of other movements in future videos. Some past videos may also cover this particular isolation. For example, we use them in our pelvic circles right here. That's where you see that tilt. We use them in our down to up undulations, tilting here, rolling up through the abs, lifting the ribs. And we also use them in our reverse undulations, or some people like to call them lower or pelvic undulations, where we're drawing a pelvic circle in this direction. So for today, the drill is only going to be about the pelvic tilt and release, and then we'll get to pelvic tilt and drop at a couple of different speeds. All right, now normally for the drills, I face into the mirror, but for this tiny little movement, I feel like the better advantage is to continue facing into the camera, and you can see the pelvic action on this angle and on the mirror angle at the same time. So beginning, of course, with our feet close together, toes forward, we're gonna soften those knees, bend them down, and pull that low belly in, just to find that strong neutral posture. So if you're saying, well, my neutral posture is to stick my butt out, try to get away from that idea and just try to find something that feels strong and supported. So your shoulders over your chest, over your hips, over your heels. All right, now we're going to begin just contracting. Pull it in, hold it to feel it, and release. And in, and release. We're going to keep going at this speed, and I want to make your awareness to come to your glutes. So sometimes our booty muscles, they like to help out more than we need them to. So if you're finding that you're squeezing your butt and pushing your hips forward, try to relax back here and just think of pulling in and up and release. Like there's a little string attached here, like to my belt, and I'm trying to pull that belt up closer to my chest. And we're just going to do another one here and release. Let's speed it up just a little bit. We're going to go squeeze and release. And try to keep the legs relaxed. So we've got our nice low plie here. The knees are nice and bent. They're not really adjusting like we do in some of our other movements. They're just kind of holding out there. Release and press, release. Okay, we're going to take this to the next level. We're going to start pushing the belly out for a bigger drop. So pull and then pop it out. And in and out. So we're doing the thing that our vanity does not want us to do. We're actually pushing that belly forward, in and push it out. It's like a little burst, and it makes the back of your pelvic tilt a little larger. You can probably see it better in the mirror reflection here. So in, it's a little more work. So it's active. You're not just dropping the belly forward, you're actively pushing forward. Boom, and push it forward. And in, and push, and in, and push. Okay, take a little break off of your knees and feet. If you can tell, it gets pretty intense when we're grounded down there in a drill for so long. We're going to take it one step faster on the push. So it's pull, push, in, push, in, push, in, push. And now you can see, get my arms out of your way, you can see how big this tiny little movement can end up looking. And then when we combine it with other isolations for other shapes, it really becomes something useful in our dance. And keep this going, and push, and pull, sorry, push, and contract, push, contract, push, 4, 3, 2, 1, release. Okay, we're going to release our low back. So come on up and bend in your knees, pull the hips back, come into a forward fold. Flat back at first, then round it out. And you should feel that low back release a little. Should feel good. Keep those knees bent, keep the belly pulled in, and come all the way up with a flat back. And that's our little drill. So just a couple more tips about that is making sure that we don't have any bouncing going on in the upper body. We don't want to start taking it into the legs and knees. If we're doing it right, Everything above the pelvis remains relatively still and calm. If you were doing this behind a counter, no one would know what was happening. That's our goal with this one. Okay, so keep practicing that. We're going to come back in future weeks with those pelvic circles, pelvic undulations, and down to up torso undulations to show you some of the ways we use this isolation. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to get technique tips every week, and I will see you in the next one.